a rather novel idea, a new citizen's inheritance, where every 30-year-old would be just handed £10,000. Simple.
Yeah, the idea has been proposed by Conservative politician Lord David Willis in a bid to combat deepening inequalities. So today, we are debating, should citizens' inheritance be introduced? Essentially, should every 30-year-old be given 10 grand? Okay.
Well, joining us now is businesswoman Geeta Sindhi-Robb, who believes this is a good idea. And we have the financial market commentator David Belle, who thinks not. Well, there we go. Should we start with you, Geeta? So you think £10,000 into every 30-year-old's bank account would be a good way to combat intergenerational inequality?
I think the problem with looking at it as they're going to go straight off to Mallorca on holiday takes away from the fact that there is an issue here where house prices are ranging at 8 times your average salary. It is predicted that the average household in the United Kingdom is going to be £17,000 in debt by 2026. That's almost 1 year's salary there. And what we have to do is have this conversation about what can we do about it. There is a very real place where none of my children are going to be able to afford to buy a house. They're not really going to be able to afford it. Now, do I think we should throw 10 grand at 30-year-olds? Maybe at 30 you're old enough to think, oh my God, I'm really never going to get out of rented accommodation. I'm never going to... It's not enough to earn money. It isn't. We know this. Now, today, it's not enough to earn money. You have to have an inheritance in order to be able to buy a house and survive, but you're not also inheriting that because people live longer. So you're going to inherit it at 65 or 70. What do you do in the interim? It is so expensive to buy a house and you can't afford a deposit. What do we do with all those things?
Well, there you go, David. £10,000 goes straight into the deposit. Bish, bash, bosh, more people on the housing ladder.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, my perspective is there's two ways to look at it. There's the aggregate level and then there's the individual level. As an individual, it's fantastic to receive 10 grand. On the aggregate level for the economy, what's going to happen is house prices are already elevated. Rent prices are going to increase because landlords know that renters now have a little bit more money. It's the same stuff that's happened over the pandemic where the money's entered the economy right into people's hands. And what happened? House prices went up. The stamp duty cut led to an 11% saving initially, but then house prices rose by 15% on average, 4% net increase. It's the same with everything. The inflation that we have or have had recently is a purely monetary phenomenon where too much money enters the economy versus not a subsequent rise in production of goods.
So essentially, this would just fuel inflation.
But I'll tell you what else it's fueling. I think it's fueling the old handout, crybaby attitude that a younger generation has had for so long. What on earth have 30-year-olds just done en masse to deserve 10 grand?
What have they done to deserve student debt?
Well, going to university.
Well, is that something we should fine? Should we fine people trying to get an education? Should we fine Britain actually becoming more educated, more employable? I don't really think so. So if we look at it as a bleeding heart concept, which I am definitely not a bleeding heart liberal, I'm a raging capitalist, but I think this is good for the economy. No, because I think it's important. I just think you've got to have somebody that comes from my background willing to argue this point. Because if we don't make it, most women, when you come out of a divorce, for example, which is happening younger and younger, the first year post-divorce are 41% worse off than the men they've gotten divorced from. They will take on the majority of childcare. Some of those people are 30. What are we doing to help people that are struggling to make ends meet? Give me another option that you're not going to call a bleeding heart.
No, I just...
Cut taxes.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Cut taxes on 30-year-olds. That would be good, wouldn't it, David?
Or to be fair, you make a good point, by the way. No, but you make a good point about the student loan side of things, because I would do something about that. I think it's we should be pushing more people to go and get a practical trade. This idea that the best way to go about it, that it's stigmatised if you're not at university, I find bonkers. But
yeah, like an apprentice scheme that we used to have. Let's have those again.
Yeah, look, David, I mean, is there not some thought here that this is just a bit of a stupid idea that would people feel as though they just deserve things that they don't deserve?
Well, I think there is definitely a case of feeling hard done by. I think the issue is that a lot of people don't necessarily understand the actual functioning of the economy. And, you know, I don't blame them. It's very, very difficult to understand. How many people could, you know, let you know what the Bank of England have said at their latest monetary policy statement, for example? Not many. And so this is the issue. At the heart of it, we've got politicians that are sort of themselves quite misunderstood about the real top-level issues, and then that feeds down through to the economy. So we're looking at, you know, politicians who believe in first-order effects rather than second- and third-order effects here. And I think that is the real issue.
Well, a lot of people thinking about £10,000 for 30-year-olds. They think, why 30, firstly? And also, why not 50 or 60?
Could I just... I'll put this to you. So this has come through from Martin. We're getting a lot of emails about this. GBnews.com. Give all 30-year-olds 10K. Where was that when I was 30? I was told if you want anything, you have to work for it. He says, I had 2 jobs, so did my wife. We never had a holiday and did anything for years to buy a run-down old dump that we had to do all the repairs ourselves. He says it's a joke. Essentially, it's the old, they don't know they're born.
So now that man would today have to do all of that and have student debt and have to pay more. So what I'm saying is his money would not go as far. And so what you're almost talking about is trying to find a level playing field. It's attention grabbing and it sounds really stupid, but there is a place where actually people cannot afford to buy a home.
But there never has been a level playing field, has there, David? And it's not the case that all older people... a lot of older people are already giving their children more than £10,000 to try and get them on the housing ladder.
I think if you look back to the 1980s, though, the average affordability rate was about 4 times income. Now it's 8 to 12. If you're a woman in London, it's even higher, for example. So there's massive, massive disparities. And this is a monetary phenomenon, again, as I've said. In the 80s, that's when we reached peak interest rates after the inflation of the 70s. Since then, it's just gone all the way down. And what that means is that something called the risk-free rate, there's a hurdle at which it means that getting involved in property just gives you a better long-term return. And we shouldn't be thinking of property necessarily as an investment. That is the issue. We should be thinking, and this is linked to the British ISA that we've just heard things spoken about in the last couple of days. There's just a level of stupidity here from politicians because they're wanting to ban tax incentives on overseas held shares. But the problem is that UK companies are rubbish to invest in. Really, really bad. You know, you get a great dividend yield, but that is not what investors need these days because we've been shifted so far along the risk curve, especially 30-year-olds.
I guess if things were as simple as, the taxpayer can just cough up £10,000 to every 30-year-old, then they'll all be able to get on the housing ladder, no one will be living in poverty, everyone will be A-OK, then we'd do it, fine. But obviously it's not as simple as that.
Can I just say, we're all assuming here that they're going to do something sensible with this money.
Yeah,
as well.
That's very true.
Saying they said they were going to go to Mallorca.
We're going to end up seeing a load of people on TikTok and on Twitter spending £30,000 on a few magnums of champagne and goodness knows what else at night.
And goodness knows what else.
Birkin is an investment. You can't buy a Birkin for £10,000, but you get a good rate of return on that.
Well, there we go.
Can you imagine? You get £10,000 from the government into your bank account and you go straight to Hermes and buy yourself a £10,000 handbag.
You have a deposit for a house.
I mean, crazy.
Increase in value.
Well,
crazy.
I suppose, there we go. Well, look, both of you, thank you very much. It has got the inbox absolutely raging this. My youngest son is 30, bought his brand new home 2 years ago. Both of my children have their own homes. I thought that Felix, I'll be honest with you, I thought there was going to be a point to that, but actually just showing off.
And Doug says, good idea.
No point there at all, Felix. Just going, yeah, we're doing really well.
Doug says, good idea. Use the illegal immigration money. Well, there we go. We did find out that it's costing us £15 million a day for hotel accommodation.